Hi, this is El Hay, a subarctic beekeeper, one of the many, north of Fairbanks, Alaska, way north of Anchorage, 7-hour drive. I'm going to go through a hive check today. It is Sunday. Temperature in the direct sun is 88 degrees Fahrenheit. Ask a northern beekeeper if she wants to have her bee jacket on in 88 degrees Fahrenheit. The answer would be an overwhelming no. But you gotta do what you gotta do. So this is my super hive. This is the hive, there's always one each year that produces more than anything else, is more active, is stronger, etc. I always use old world carniolians. I got turned on to Caucasian bees this year. We'll see how they do. Got good reviews. I'm going to start this hive inspection with drawing out my apiary, just making boxes. Essentially dividing it out so I don't have to remember stuff. So on this I can write where I find honey, where I find larvae, where I find eggs, the condition of the queen, the condition of the colony, etc., and any notes from anything that I need to do. Strap my hives because the moose show absolute disregard for any kind of structural thing in the interior of Alaska. And last year they knocked over some hives. I've got a smoker over here, burning away, just drifting. I'm not going to use it to smoke inside the hive unless I need to. It is warm enough for sugar spray, but I'll use that as a last resort. I've got a queen cage thing here. That is because I suspect there might be a new queen in at least one of these hives. If there is, I want to catch her and mark her. I don't want to spend all my time looking for an unmarked queen. Also, on today's adventure, I'm going to try my hand at grafting some queens. It is very late in our season, it's mid-July, but the weather is predicted to stay warm and dry. Right now, I've got bees flying upwards. What I'm hoping that is are drones, which would be great. That means you're looking for virgin queens, and it'd be a good day for mating. So I'm hopeful. One of the tricks I find with beekeeping is space. I can't do the whole put your hive on the ground thing because there's too many critters here that want to get into hives. And also bending down and getting up and bending down and getting up hurts too much. So I have these little tables that have very adjustable legs that I use, which seem to work well for me. They don't seem to, they just do. So I'm going to start just by going all the way down and talk my way through it to you. We have had a lot of rain this year. We've had hail. It's been some crazy weather. So I've got feeders on top so that I can feed some sugar syrup if needed, make things easier, have it ready for them. One of the things that happens with having a top feeder, bees have just figured out I'm here, they're coming closer. This is one of those. I try to put things where I can easily access them. When there's bees on them, I try to face the bees away from me. So I'm going to set this lid down here against my table. My smoker's going hot, but it's also burning fast fuel. So I'm going to reach over here, look around, see what I've got to burn. What isn't there to burn, right? I've got some twigs and some dried grass that'll last a little bit longer, at least the twigs will, than the toilet paper roll that I have inside there. This will keep it burning. I'm still waiting for someone to make a smoker that lasts more than a year. Hasn't happened. I'm repairing them after a year. Mostly the lids come off. The This part rips for me. Got me. I'm also the kid that used to rip her jeans when I was in elementary school from being too rough climbing trees. But if a smoker will work for me, it'll work for anybody, I'm sure. Let's set the smoke back down. I do have some bees up here. What I found is that if I leave this open for a little bit, particularly if the temperatures are cool, they will climb back in. So there's no need to brush them, poke them, push them, convince them, bribe them. I am excited to see them active, looking for feed. There's 2 left that need to go up into the feeder. After that, I'm going to pull this top honey super off, and I'm going to set it on the table next to the hive. I'm not going to look at those frames until last. What I am going to do is use my pry bar, stick it between the honey super and the queen excluder, pop it, and check for propolis. I want lots of propolis. Propolis means the bees are doing a great job at plugging up any air holes, any leaks. We need that in the winter up here. Southern race bees tend to not make as much propolis. Try to crack the propolis with minimal disruption. The bees know me because I spend enough time out here that, they know my smell, they know my body language, my movements, my habits, etc. Bees can recognize faces. The National Honeybee Survey people were here last week, and there were quite a few stings. I think because the people getting in the hives were not known to the bees. So now I'm in the brood box, deep brood. This queen has been producing wonderfully, and I really want to graft some larvae from her. Queen excluder keeps her down. I want to move slowly, but deliberately. I'm going to use my smoker right now. I want to drive these bees a little bit down into the hive because I don't want to injure any of them. By cracking off the queen excluder, anyone getting pinched or squished, you know the sound, the crunch. I'm using plastic gloves. I have more dexterity this way than the traditional leather gloves that get wet and then stiff and sticky. This hive has a lot of propolis. These are old world carnies. And I'm going to take this queen excluder and set it on top of my feeder. There's some burr comb on there. Oh, look at that, isn't that pretty? That means they've had too much space in the hive and they've tried to fill it up with comb. That's because I only have 9 frames in this feeder. This colony has been so active that I've anticipated it making a lot of honey. So any bee that you squish or kill, the guts are going to come out. I don't want to anthropomorphize, but I kind of do. But there seems to be a lot of compassionate behaviors going on. There's a bee on her back here, one that was injured over here. The other bees come to her, they'll drag her off, they'll attend to her. I personally, it works for me, start from left to right. That way I don't forget where I was in the next inspection. I try to do things the same so I know my patterns, and if I do forget, I can guess as to where I was. My smoker is not in the right place to be drifting on the bees. I'm going to move it over. Be careful that you don't burn your hive stand or anything else. Don't set it too close to your hive, especially if you have polystyrene, because it'll melt your hive, and repair sucks. So I have a brick. I'm just going to put it right here. It's going to go out. It always does for me. If it does, I'll relight it. I have a tote over to my side. I use this for putting in the frames so that anyone that falls off the frames falls into the tote. That way I don't lose any bees, and I certainly don't lose the queen. try to avoid reaching over the hive like I'm doing right now. I haven't found another way of doing it that I am as comfortable with, so I still do it. I admire the people that go and look at their bees in shorts and tank tops. I'm not one of those people. Maybe one day. This frame, oh, is a dream, isn't it? Lots of brood, tons of brood. So I'm looking for the queen. I don't see her. I'm holding the frame over the hive. I'm also looking for eggs and larvae. And I'm lightly blowing on the frame to separate the bees. I do see a couple of supersedure cells with larvae in them, so they're making another queen. I don't see any eggs or well, I do see some larvae. I don't see any eggs on this frame. I do use black frames so they're easy to see. Easier to see than if I had a yellow frame. My queen would be red because she's from last year. I'm gonna shake some of those bees off the edges. That's enough to piss them off, isn't it? And just lean that frame in the tote. I'm going to remove some of this burr comb that is on the side of the hive. Doing it with my fingers. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. You do you. Looking in here, see what the bees are doing. There's a good level of activity. I see some waggle dancing going on. That means they've discovered pollen and nectar. We've got a lot blooming right now. We've got a drone here being carried off by the worker. We've got fireweed everywhere. But we've also got a lot of other things like clover and yarrow and goldenrod. There's a recent article that said goldenrod and buckwheat and a couple other things were really good for helping bees build vitellogenin for the winter. Good to know. Another beauty frame. This queen is a gem and I want to retain her genetics. I want to make more queens from her, more daughters. Sometimes if you can't find her, looking sideways helps. Looking at an angle because she'll move differently than the others. Got a lot of young bees. That means some of them have hatched recently. Some drones. I do see some larvae on here. I see a bee hatching. I'm going to put that in the tote right next to the other one, matching up the sides of the frame. And I'm doing that so nobody gets squished. My simple chart. We're going to call this the blue hive. Blue. So, I'm making a note. Brood. Frames. We've got them on number 9, number 8. We've got supersedure cell. See, if I had pre-prepared for this better, I would have written a code like S for supersedure, B for brood, etc. So I could just do the letters. I'll do that now. S equals supersedure. B is a brood frame for me. L is larva. E is eggs. Q, of course, is queen. H, honey. And then if I need to make some other notes that have more details, I'll do that. Supersedure is 1. And because I'm going to try grafting today, I want to mark which frames have larvae and eggs on them. I also want to know where the brood frames are, because that's where the queen is going to be, most likely. There she is. I really love her. She's right there, looking for a place to lay. This is a frame that I really want to thoroughly check for eggs, because she's on it now. And I don't want to lose her, so I'm going to stick this frame right back in the hive. Now she's on the bottom of this frame. I want to make sure I keep it over the hive. I'm just blowing the bees away from the cells. Here's my queen. There she is. Putting her right back in here. I don't want to risk taking her out. She is one of the best queens I've had. She wintered last year, so any daughters that she has have her genetics and will be stronger. It's epigenetics for you. When the environment that you're being raised in or you grow up in, the conditions end up changing your genetics so that your offspring have some predispositions or some strengths or some weaknesses. Another frame of brood. I love this hive. Lots of larvae. This would be a good frame for making a split or boosting a slow hive. I don't see any eggs, which means I've probably missed them because she is real active. So on here we've got brood in the middle, we've got larvae on the edges. And for grafting, I want to look for the tiniest eggs I can find. You can hear their hum. It's pretty mellow. These are some contented bees. I don't need to put this one in the tote because the hive is not so full. So if I am completely removing all the frames, I'll put them all in the tote. If I'm just moving a couple for space, just a couple get moved. Holy crow. So 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, which means we've got brood on all those frames. Another frame. Oh my, look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Look at that brood pattern. Looking for eggs. And also, see what's happening. Got the babies, got the foragers, everything in between, so all stages represented. All the jobs are getting taken care of. Each bee has a different job per its age. The nurse bees, the undertaking bees, the guard bees, etc. Now this frame is a frame that I stuck in here that didn't have enough comb on it. And so I wanted to put it near the brood nest, but not too close, but close enough that the bees would want to put some comb on it. It's late in the season for that. Typically it happens real early, but they are doing it, and they've got some bee bread in there. Lots of big daddy drones. My bees are getting a little feisty. If you can see on this frame, you can see the dark spots. That's bee bread. That is used to feed the babies. One thing about these gloves is they don't make them small enough for my hands. So my fingers get stuck in between the frame and the hive, and it sometimes rips. And they only last a couple times, but much better than the cloth ones or the leather ones. So I've got 3 more frames to check. Lots of waggle dancing going on here. Also a giant supersedure cell. This frame is almost completely full of drones. Drones and pollen. The pollen coming in is orange. We'll get some purple pollen coming in from the fireweed. Waggle dancing happening all over the place. Now if I shake this frame off in the front of the hive, the drones are going to fall into the grass and may or may not make it back into the hive. The drones are energy suckers. Although, the supersedure cell, I want to check and see if there's larvae in it. There's not. There's no eggs on this frame. But the drones are necessary for breeding, and I have some anticipation of some virgin queens, so I'm going to need those drones. And having those drones from this queen means they get some of her genetics. So I'm going to keep them. When I have a lot of drone comb at the bottom, I'll scrape it off and use it to check for varroa mites by squishing it in my hands. It's gross, but it's very effective because those varroa mites love the drone brood. We've got some here that needs to be removed. This hive has pollen and bee bread and nectar and more drone comb. So I usually use a frosting spreader to do this, but I didn't bring it with me. My smoker's still smoking, so I'm going to use that to remove some of the bees. Well, my broken smoker. You know what sucks is having part of your smoker fall into the hive. Trust me. This is my second to last frame in this hive. Peel this off. Be careful about doing those kind of gestures in front of the hive because they can get startled. This drone comb tends out to be pretty tough. Hard to do sometimes with just one hand holding the frame, and expect some guts, some squishy white yucky guts. So I'll take it and I'll throw it in front of the frame, in front of the hive, and I'll get it later on tonight when the bees are in their hive, and then I'll squish through it, and then I'll feed them to the chickens. I've got some eggs in here. My tone comes from the fact that they are not shaped like little eggs. So I need to keep an eye on that. So I'll make a note. I'm calling that frame 8 because I've only got 9 frames in here. It might be mite frass. Frass is another word for poop. You notice I'm moving slow. I don't need to rush. And the slower I move, the more they can anticipate my movements. This is completely full of drones. I've got a couple of workers trying to drag them off. I'm going to shake this one. I've got some weird comb going on here. So I'm going to take this frame over here. And I'm going to shake it. Get some of those drones off there. Help a sister out. So they're still building some comb on this frame. You can see got some drone comb going on here. I'm going to pinch off the pitch. Alright. I really wanted to grab some queens from this hive, but I do not see eggs. However, she is on that frame that I left inside, so I'll come back to it. I'm going to put the frames back. Can you hear their hum changing in intensity and pitch? I'm also looking inside the hive. I don't see any signs of dysentery, which could be a sign of possible nosema infection because the bees will poop in the hive because they can't hold it to get out of the hive to poop. They're getting worked up. So I'm just going to slow down a little bit, as if I could move any slower. I've already moved the frames, and I'm moving them again. So I'm going to double check that one frame for eggs. This is the last frame here. I've got two over here. This is the one that had the queen. I just got stung. So I just held my hand over the smoker to get rid of that pheromone. That is released when one gets stung. This is the frame with the queen on it, if she's still on here. I just want to see if I've missed any eggs. And actually, I don't know that I want to take eggs from this frame now, because if they're this few in number, we're going towards autumn and I want this hive to be as strong as possible. But then again, I do want queens from this hive, daughters from this queen, for a couple of other hives I have. One is queenless. I could send away for a queen that's already been bred from lower 48, but I don't want to take the chance of bringing in any nosema virus or anything else. And I say that because I've had nosema the last 3 years, or my bees have had nosema the last 3 years. And all the infections happened after I had a queen shipped up. Okay. I'm going to push these very slowly together. I don't know where that queen is right now. I do have a honey super on this hive, so if they are going to make honey, I have room for it. In go the bees that fell into the tote. I add this additional frame in here, the drawn comb, and I'm adding it on the end here because that's where I found all the brood. That's where I found the queen. She seemed to be looking for room. Alright, my pretties. I'm going to smoke this, put the queen excluder back on, and then I'm going to go into the honey super. The reason I'm smoking it right now is because putting that queen excluder on doesn't leave much room. I think there's more room in a wood Langstroth hive, less in the polystyrene hives for sure. And if you're curious, even though we have lots of sources of natural nectar and pollen, I am going to add some Hive Alive to help protect them from mites. And you know, they just love it. And I don't know when the weather's going to change. Could change at any time. Space. Final frontier. Alright. What do we got? Oh. These things are interfering. These pieces of fur comb. I don't want to hear the squish. The sound of a bee being squished. And it's going to happen if I don't get them in. I don't need much. You can see there's hardly any smoke coming through there. And the lid's falling off. For the love of God. Alright. I'm going to put this honey super back on. It's made of wood. It's not polystyrene. I wish it was. Shipping up here is way too expensive. Got a bunch of bees down here. And I'm going to remove the feeder. It's stuck with propolis, very good. I've got a handful of bees on the table. I don't know if they're visible with the video. That was sealed well. I'm going to bang it and face it away from me. So any bees that are on there, ideally, would fall into the hive. I don't want to squish them. It happens, but, well, I think it just did happen. This little one is hurt. I'm going to check these honey frames. See if we got anything going here. It's been such a weird summer that I suspect there isn't much going on here in terms of honey. Again, I'm going to start from left to right. I'm actually going to look first. No wasps. An ant on the side that I've squished. I don't have anything that I can see. I see a lot of white comb. I don't see anything capped. I see bees coming up. I see bees coming up to the top. Nope. Nope. No honey yet. So I suspect with all that brood that's going to be hatching soon, we have some uncapped honey here. So if this was capped honey, what I would do is I would pull this one frame, stick it in a tote over there at the end of my apiary, so the bees can't get to it. Of course, brush your bees off first. Put the top on the tote. I harvest honey frame by frame instead of box by box. Box by box is heavy, but also doesn't allow me to separate the honey by color or by when it happened. You know, is it fireweed honey or is it mid-season honey? Those honeys have different tastes. And one of the things I like to do is spin my honey according to color. It's really beautiful. So these, they need some more time here. Nope. Nope, nope. Nope, nope. Okay. Call it unconventional, but I'm doing it anyways. You do you, I'll do me. I made some pollen patties, or some pollen gunk, that has stuff in it. Based on the Honeybee Health Coalition supplemental feeding report that was issued in January, that I found extremely useful. They have plenty of pollen in the environment. That is with what they're going to make the honey and the bee bread. Pollen patties they ingest, so it goes through their body. In this is pollen substitute, honey, chitin, borage oil, vitamin C, a probiotic, pollen from last year. What else? I always forget something. So I don't want to waste it, for sure. But what I found with this particular colony is they eat up anything I give them. I also have some Hive Alive fondant. Why would I add both? Why would I not? Because it says different stuff in it. I found this to be really helpful. They ate it so fast in the winter that the bees that got through it had no food, whereas the bees that had the sugar cake I had made them went through their food much slower. So this is not something I want to give them in the winter unless my temperatures during the winter are going to allow for a cleansing flight. Up here they don't. We don't get temperatures for cleansing flights in our winters. We'll have 3 or 4 weeks where it's 30 below zero, 40 below zero, 50 below zero Fahrenheit. They're not coming out. Even I winter my hives indoors. They also want to tucker in. So I'm going to put a little Hive Alive on here. It's got thymol in it, which is from the herb called thyme. And it helps against varroa. It's got sugar syrup, dried seaweed, water, thyme, lecithin, lemongrass oil, yeast. I forgot to tell you I add yeast to my pollen gunk. Yeast as well as chickpea flour were found to increase brood production. It's got a bunch of amino acids, and then vitamins B1, B2, B3, B6, biotin, panthenol, niacinamide. Protein is less than 1%. It's 0.5%. It's got some less than 5% fiber, less than 5% fat, crude ash, less than 1%, and less than 0.03% in sodium. Interesting thing about sodium is I have a hive on my deck surrounded by flowers. It's my orphan hive. And I had mixed some warm salt water for rinsing my peonies, for rinsing the ants off my peony flowers before I gave them out. A dip in the salt water and a swish takes the ants off and doesn't hurt the flower. And my bees went right to it. What? They went right to it and started gobbling it down. So I kept it going. And they loved their salt water. And I looked it up and I found some research that shows that bees like salt water. It gives them some minerals, some nutrients, some help with brood rearing, if I remember correctly. Helps them with the brood. I might get some of this wrong because I'm trying to do two things at one time. But you can look it up, which is even better because if you look it up, you'll remember it. So I'm putting some Hive Alive on here. The forager bees are the bees that leave the hive to go find the pollen and the nectar. These younger bees, the nurse bees that are in the hive taking care of the brood and the queen and such, are dependent on them for food, dependent on those foragers for food. And so I would expect that that's why my bees are going at it right now. Can you see them? Pollen gunk, Hive Alive. Pollen gunk was put down first, Hive Alive second. I am not sponsored by Hive Alive. I have no sponsorships. But these bees are on it. They are on it like I don't know, like they can't resist it. They're on it. They're coming up from the bottom of the hive and they are chewing down. And it's interesting because this Hive Alive, it's fondant, so it's sticky. It's a little pliable, but it's not liquidy. You know, they've got to mandible it. They've got to chew it up. But they are eager for its nutrients. There's a few hitting this pollen patty as well. No, I'm not worried about it interfering with the honey, because it won't. But it'll keep them strong and sustain them. You can see by the activity around the front of the hive, they're a healthy colony. So next I'm going to close this hive up. I'm going to put the feeder on. And I'm going to add a little syrup, just a little bit, that has liquid Hive Alive in it, because when you invest this much in bees, in your bees, time, energy, money, and up here, buying a new box of bees and having it shipped from California is $250 a box. And it's a box of cold, stressed bees. We're not talking a nuke. When you invest this much and you love them this much, you want to take care of them. And you want them to survive. And actually to thrive, right? So I've got a few on the top. I'm going to knock them off. Boink, boink. Got one inside that's going to go in. Got my mixture. Just about I'd say a quarter cup. And in that quarter cup is a little bit of sugar, a little bit of 1-to-1 sugar syrup, lemon juice to change the pH so the bees can digest it easier, liquid Hive Alive, and then Honey Bee Healthy is quite expensive, great product. I use something that I make myself, Honey Bee Healthy, if you will, which is sugar syrup with some lemongrass oil and some spearmint oil. If you're not familiar with using essential oils with your bees, make sure it's organic and know that those essential oils have trace minerals in them and nutrients and protective qualities against mites and all the other gunk that impact our bees. And those bees are going crazy for the juice. Lid's going back on. No mold. It's another thing about Hive Life, no mold. Who doesn't love that? So that's the end of this hive inspection. Kind of a short one, surprisingly. But take care of yourself, take care of your bees, and say prayers, donate, do whatever you can to help Ukraine. They're fighting every day over there for their very existence. This video cast is copyrighted and all rights are reserved. See you later.